Oh, awesome. How are you?
I'm fine. Sorry about all the mix-ups.
No, it leads me right to my first question. So where are you at today and these days?
I'm in Rome, in Italy.
Okay, so what brings you there? Is that work, or that's where you're living part
Well,
time or full time, or?
I live here. I moved here in 2017.
Yep.
I was going 3-4 months and, dragging heavy bags around for 3 or 4 months, and then having the odd week or two where I wasn't booked anywhere. So I was paying out of pocket to stay in an Airbnb.
Sure.
It got very tiresome. And one day I was here in Rome and I thought to myself, could I live here? And I thought, yeah. So I said, screw it. I mean, I work in Italy a lot, so it makes sense for me, and all over Europe. So instead of leaving for 3 or 4 months at a time and dragging those heavy bags around, I go on a little weekender with an overnight bag, and then I come back home.
So do you get to the States at all, or fairly frequently now that you're on the other side? Yeah.
Well, not that frequently, but yeah, I mean, I just did a big show at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles with Pink Floyd in June, and that was pretty awesome. So next year I'll be doing some more work with them.
Well, there we go. And it leads right to the next question. I mean, what are you up to right now? Obviously, sometimes beyond the live performance, when you are working with other artists, there's sometimes a good lag time or lead time. You could record something now that isn't out till next fall. So are there things you're working on now, keeping busy?
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm sitting right by my little studio setup.
There we go.
So I do record vocals from home. So if anybody needs any, look me up and hire me.
Very good.
I actually have a song. I don't know if it's still number one. A song that was number one in the charts in Netherlands with a guy named Jorn Rees. A song called Dark Shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really happy with how that came out. I recorded that right here.
Nice.
My vocals. There's another song called Time for a Change with Gino Joubert, which I found out is now number 9 on the American something charts. So we're in the top 10. I'm charting all over the place. I'm really kind of pleasantly surprised. I just a couple of days ago recorded for my dear friend Fernando Perdomo is putting out a Beatles tribute thing, and I got to sing one of my favorite songs of theirs to sing, which is "Come Together." Okay. And I'm singing lead on that. So yeah, I kind of kicked some serious ass on that one, if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
And in terms of touring, the beginning of November, stuff ramps up. I've got 5 dates in Argentina. And then in December, I'm doing a big show in Santiago de Chile with some of my old Pink Floyd touring mates, including my sister Lorelei.
Okay.
It'll be Lorelei McBroom, Durga McBroom, Machan Taylor, and Scott Page.
Okay.
So that's going to be pretty awesome. And then later in December, again with my sister in Argentina, once again, with a band called Bad Dreams.
Very nice. So, I mean, obviously you mentioned your sister, and then obviously you have you've got a pretty established act with her. Is that something when you were kids, you found out, I mean, kids find out they can do all kinds of things at all kinds of times, but is that something you grew up together learning that, hey, we can sing, and we somewhat, we can also sing together and work together as well? Yeah,
we've been singing together since we were kids. Although Lorelei was primarily more interested in music when we were growing up. I was the actress in the family.
That's right.
I went to theater arts. I was a theater arts major at UCLA. I was there at the same time as people like Tim Robbins and Lee Ehrenberg, who was in a lot of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. He was the one that always said, "I love Pope." Yeah, that was my friend Lee. We started in theater arts together in high school, actually, Santa Monica High School. In fact, our teacher, Eugene Jellison, was an amazing theater arts teacher, and he taught us, as well as Sean Penn, Robert Downey Jr., Emilio Estevez. A lot of amazing actors came through the Santa Monica High School Theater Arts Department. So we grew up. God bless our mother. Our mother was an extremely hardworking cardiologist. In fact, she's believed to be the first Black female American cardiologist with a private cardiology practice.
Holy cow.
In the US. And she would come home after, 10, 11-hour day, in the office. And we'd have our little music thing that we'd been working on after school. And we'd say, Mom, we have to see. And we'd sing something for her. And she would sit very patiently and was very supportive of us. But, in retrospect, as an adult, I think, oh my God, how she must have been exhausted, but she loved to connect with us when she came home from work.
Well, and on that note, I mean, obviously, two sisters with with that certainly that performing and then that vocal capability. Is there somewhere in your family tree that you can look back and go, that might be where that comes from? If not an influence, certainly some. Yeah,
there is. Our maternal grandfather was in a barbershop quartet, and apparently he had an amazing voice. So it may have come there. I mean, our father always instilled a love of the arts in us, both of our parents, but particularly our father used to play a lot of Broadway for us and got us interested in West Side Story.
Okay.
That the Broadway production of West Side Story lived on my turntable for a long time, and I would just play it over and over and over. I wanted to be Anita so bad. But yes, our maternal grandfather was an amazing singer.
Okay. And
but our mother also, our father, I remember when I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, our father took us to see a production of Giselle, the ballet.
Okay. Yep.
I remember it. I remember these women in these white chiffon flowing gowns en plein dancing and thinking it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Our mother took us to the Grand Opera House in Paris when I was about 8 or 9 years old. So our parents exposed us to the arts quite a lot.
No, it's very good. Well, and just on that note, you mentioned obviously working, obviously with your acting and some of the names that you were working with in the early 80s. And then obviously I've seen you in Flashdance, for God's sakes. How did that must set you up maybe better, maybe grounds you a little bit more when all of a sudden, somebody like Pink Floyd comes a calling. Did that ground you a little bit more than if you were just, say, didn't have that performance background as much, but they were still interested in having you on board, so to speak?
Well, I definitely got my chops in terms of stagecraft and being present on stage and having an awareness of myself and not being completely overwhelmed by being in front of an audience.
Sure.
And also, our mother got us involved in EST back in the 1970s with Werner Erhard, and he was like the godfather of self-help groups. So a lot of the programs involved exercises where you had to stand on a stage in front of the whole room.
Oh, there you go.
So I grew up doing this. I mean, I'm actually writing my autobiography right now.
Okay, very good.
And I recall the people who ran what was called the training, the EST training, were called, they were trainers. Mm-hmm. Within the EST world, they were like gods. They were the most powerful people in the organization because they led these programs and literally assisted people in transforming their lives. I saw some amazing transformations. People think it's all like hocus pocus and some nonsense. I saw people's lives shift in a way that is still astounding and inspiring to me to this day. Now imagine these people, these titans among men.
Yep.
All of them sitting in Werner's house. He had a room in the attic. He had a house called Franklin House in San Francisco, a beautiful Victorian house. And on their downtime, sitting there in their chairs while a little 9-year-old or 10-year-old girl acted out all the parts in Cheech and Chong routines for them. And that would be me.
There you go.
So these people that a lot of people were terrified of or in awe of, I used to have them rolling, crying, laughing at 10 years old. So I was kind of born to perform.
Well, and not to date neither you or I, because Lord knows you were on stage with them, but I'm old enough to remember, certainly Delicate Sound of Thunder and whatnot. I mean, your work at the time and then the subsequent tour, you're working with the biggest band in the world.
Yeah,
Time,
that was
right?
pretty intense, I will say, because, you know, I really hadn't been working in music that long. I was, it just was one of those synchronicitous occurrences. Lorelei had been signed by Capitol Records, and an old friend of the family's, Nile Rodgers, and he produced her first album. And she had flown me out to New York to sing on her album with her. I was doing backing vocals, and that was when the call came.
Wow.
Michael Pilo was the production manager for the live concert videos that were shot at the Omni in Atlanta for, well, it was the Momentary Lapse of Reason tour. And David Gilmour asked him if he knew any Black singers because he wanted to, quote unquote, add some color.
Yep.
And Michael knew my sister, so he recommended her, and she recommended me because I was there. And we luckily had you know, professional recordings of us singing together because we had just been recording this album. So we sent that down. And then Lorelei recommended another friend of hers, Roberta Freeman, who went on to tour with Guns N' Roses. And they hired us on the spot and flew us down, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and there you are. And then it's a great gig in the sky and everything that comes with working with.
Well, that came later.
Yes, yeah,
that
absolutely.
wasn't in the first part of the tour. That started, oh my God. Once I joined the tour, after Atlanta, Lorelei did some shows with them at the Sports Arena in Los Angeles. And then after that, because she was signed to Capitol, they asked me to join the tour. They needed someone to sing the low parts anyway, and that's where I live.
There we go.
And because they had Machan Taylor and Rachel Fury. I started in San Francisco, and we went on from there. So I don't remember why I started talking about this. What was I talking about?
Oh,
anyway.
I brought up great gig. Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. So we did that first part, you know, North America, whatever. And then it wasn't until, and then we got to Australia, and we did all of Australia in January of 1988. And then in February, we went to Japan. And that's when at Budokan, I got to perform at Budokan. That's when we added Great Gig to the set. Boy, was that tough in the beginning.
So, I mean, I don't want to, obviously this is not the Pink Floyd hour or anything, but how has it changed? I mean, obviously you talked about you've got the recording studio right there in front of you. Are you on their Hey Hey Rise Up from last year that they, or from earlier this year that they put out? No? Okay.
No, they recorded that in England. I'm sure they recorded that at Dave's
Well,
studio.
with the technology, I was wondering if they could just literally throw you the sketch and then you throw some stems up, right? But
I wish they'd asked me, but they didn't. I mean, you know, they have plenty of fabulous singers close to home, and I'm sure he would. David is extremely exacting in terms of quality and what he wants to hear. So I'm sure that he wanted to oversee every bit of minutia when it comes to recording that song.
Sure.
So he would have insisted on recording it at his own studio, and he'd produce it. He wouldn't have wanted me to send my vocals from here.
Well, and exactly that. I mean, obviously, when you were working with them and other band and Blue Pearl in the 80s and stuff, it very much was like Live Aid, where you'd come into a studio, there'd be the couch, you'd lay down some tracks and whatnot. Now here, I mean, I could do the same thing and bring in a mic and it certainly
absolutely.
changed the way recording happens. And technology and everything, right?
Definitely. I mean, back in the day, you had to, cough up the money to go rent a professional studio. And now I can just roll out of bed in my pajamas and throw down some tracks and send them to you.
Well, Well, and you think it's, oh, what a great place. They've got a couch and they've got video games. Well, that's wasting your time because they're charging you per hour when you're in the studio. Whereas now, here we are, right?
You have to also remember the other infrastructure costs and just renting the brick and mortar building. And paying the staff and all of that. I mean, back in the day, studios used to cost, $200, $300, $400 an hour, if not more, depending on the studio.
When you don't have a floating one on the Thames, for God's sakes, like David does.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where we recorded the Division Bell, but also.
You did, okay. There we go. Okay. So you're on the boat.
Yeah, we recorded it at the Astoria. But that's the other thing is the equipment, used to have these huge, cumbersome, bulky, 2-inch or 3-inch reel to reel, whatever the hell they were,
Sure.
for the multi-tracks and all of that. And now I got my laptop.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a friend who records routinely entire albums on his iPhone.
That's insane.
In fact, let me give another little plug to,
Sure.
I'm sponsored by IK Multimedia. This is an iRig preamp.
Okay. Very nice.
I traveled with all I need is my laptop, one of these, and a mic. And I can record anywhere in the world. And I have done.
The future is now. Yeah.
I mean, IK makes an iRig thing to plug into your phone so that you can mix an entire album through your phone. And the quality is insane. It's insane.
Yep.
Wait, that's another thing. Let me see if I can get this over here. To anyone who needs a good speaker system, these IK mini, the mini studio, whatever the hell they're called, this has some of the best sound of just about any speakers I have ever owned. And
Is that right?
In fact, I know people like Tom Lord Alge mixes through these.
There you go.
And relatively speaking, for the price, can't beat it. Sorry to do a commercial for
No,
IK.
it's good.
I seriously love their products. Absolutely adore them. And one of the owners of the company is Dave Kersner, who I record with a lot.
I know, Dave.
So,
yeah.
Oh, you asked, by the way, what else I'm doing?
Yeah.
The Traveler, which is Dave Kersner's latest album, just came out, and I'm all over that.
Oh, very good.
All over it. And I think it's one of the best albums he's ever done.
I know Dave, and through his connection with Simon a little bit,
right,
from the past. And you bring up somebody else, but I wanted to touch on Blue Pearl for a second. When you get to that level and the level you're at, and the level you've been at for so long, when you hear something like Naked in the Rain or some of the other tracks you've been involved with, but even at that demo stage before you've cut the vocals, can you sometimes go, well, that one's got some real potential, I can see that one going up the charts?
Absolutely.
Or yeah, is that right?
I can feel a hit in my gut.
Yep. Is that right? There you go.
Yeah, I can. And in fact, well, I mean, just a case in point, when I first, I try to stay current. There's a lot of crap that just sucks out there, but I remember I heard Levitating by Dua Lipa.
Okay.
And I thought, well, this is a cool song. And it was enough for me to buy the album. I am obsessed with Future Nostalgia. That is one of the best produced pop albums of the last 20 years, in my opinion. There are so many tracks on that. There's so many more that should have been singles that weren't. Pretty Please, fabulously crafted song. Totally should have been a hit. Should have been one of the singles. And I have some other songs. I mean, I'm not going to mention their name right now.
Yep.
There's an older band that was very popular in the UK, and I recorded a track with them. I know it's a hit.
Okay.
But because they prefer to be more on the kind of avant-garde tip, and they don't want to be popular, they don't want to release it as a single, which to me is astounding.
Yeah.
But the minute I heard it, I was like, this would be all over this is a hit. They don't want a hit. Don't know why they're making music, but well.
Sure. Well, no, it's forgetting the chart. The whole idea is, well, you want more eyes on your prize, right? And when you have a top 10 or a top 5, that works. Yeah.
So basically what I'm trying to do right now is get a hold of that track to place it with somebody else.
Sure. Yeah. Why not? Here's a one I got just because of the day job, I got reached out to by Steve Hackett. So we set up one of these last year.
Oh,
and
nice.
he sends me the PR for the last album, and your name gets dropped on that too. You and your sister are singing. I think it's the first single, and you're in the video of his as well.
Well, we were first one. We were in the single Underground Railroad, which was on the album before the most recent one.
Right.
And he very graciously featured us on lead vocals in parts of that. I love that song. It's so lush and rich, and the textures and the changes. And it's, if you can imagine, if there was such a thing as gospel prog, That's what this song would be. And it's about his experiences. He was deeply, deeply affected by traveling along parts of the Underground Railroad in the South of the United States.
Yep.
And there's a book also called Underground Railroad, which I actually have his copy he gave to me and he signed it.
Oh,
so I think it's over in my bookshelf somewhere. But anyway, so there was that one. And then the last album was Wing Beats, which was about his experiences in Africa. And so that was another one where we recorded. Actually, I was staying at a friend's house and I had brought my rig with me. So I just set it up, flew in the vocals. Then later I was in Miami at Dave's Kersner's studio, and he just happened to have a green screen, shot me against the green screen. Lorelei shot hers, and they put us in the video.
Yeah, and so, there it is. Yeah, and I get a kick out of him with Steve because he's
humble.
Sure,
he's incredibly humble, and doesn't put on any kind of airs, and is just extremely down to earth. Just a lovely man, and oh my God, the times when I watched him live, he just sits there playing, looking like, like he's like doing the dishes or something, and this mastery flying out of his fingertips. It's such a privilege to watch that man play.
Absolutely.
I'm very, very honored to be in the Hackett camp, as it were.
Team Hackett. Have you performed with him?
Yes.
Yeah.
We performed on Cruise to the Edge.
Right.
And I think on the Blues Cruise with him, because that's where we met.
Okay.
Was on Cruise to the Edge, because my sister and I had done that several times with Dave Kersner. And that's the thing about those cruises, is it's a great kind of melting pot area to cross-pollinate, where a lot of these bands, they'll go and see other people play and they'll be like, they're really good. And then you meet up at, you're over the buffet and you're like, man, I got this song. And I'm like, yeah, why don't you come play on this? And yeah, why don't we do this? And then next thing you know, all these projects are springing up all over the place.
and you're confined to the boat. So that it's kind of making you.
Yeah.
That's
one of the greatest reasons to do it, is also because then you get to, see up close and personal. I mean, like, Tony Levin and, some of my other, Yes, for God's sake.
That's right.
Lorelei and I grew up listening to Yes songs and Tales of Topographical Oceans and Tales from Topographical Oceans and all that. And Yes is usually the headliner. So we got to know all those guys. And then spinning off, it's just like spin-off after spin-off after spin-off. I did a project with Billy Sherwood. I did a couple. And in fact, Tales, what is it? Anyway, there's so many different things that we've all done together. And it's really great to be able to hang out and actually sing and perform with some of your musical heroes.
Oh, absolutely.
We fangirl over people all the time.
Well, it's just the idea of forgetting you're fans of them. It's to work at that level and go, well, this is somebody new. They're going to bring a different perspective than, the members of Yes will have a different perspective than the members of Genesis or Pink Floyd, right? So,
right.
So how's Black Floyd doing as far as the live presentation when you get out, and then the sales and all the merch that comes with that project with your sister?
Well, when we finally got our own set on Cruise to the Edge, the last one, which had been postponed for 2 years because of COVID.
For sure.
We were very well received, and in fact, they've asked us to come again on the next one. So we will be back up with some songs. The album sales, it's slow because we don't really have the money to promote it. It's all through word of mouth. Our merch sales, we did better than some other people on the ship. So we were surprised to see that. If we had somebody willing to really back us and put us into the spotlight, it would do much better than it has, because we have not heard one bad review. In fact, quite the opposite. And we're both incredibly proud of that album. I think that was one of the gifts of COVID, if you will, because when COVID hit, the Australian Pink Floyd, who my sister tours with, was out on tour in France. And so the tour was canceled. She went back to the UK with the band, and she is very good friends with Dave Fowler, who was the lead guitarist for the Australian Pink Floyd, who also just happens to be an incredible producer. Okay. So she was stuck at his house for 6 months because she was hearing horror stories about people flying back into New York and being quarantined in these horrible quarantine camps, and
Sure.
sleeping
Yep.
on not bunks, on cots, and in these huge rooms stuffed in with all these people, which is like, well, that's the perfect breeding ground to spread it. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
So
Very
she
true.
wasn't about to do that, so she just stayed in the UK for 6 months. And because COVID had shut everything else down pretty much in the entertainment industry, Dave Fowler, who was normally doing 11 to 12 projects all at once, was stuck at home with Lorelei with nothing to do.
Yep.
So they finished the album. I mean, we've been working on it for like 7 years, and we got it mixed and mastered because of COVID. So that's one blessing that we received because of that horrible time.
Well, and I can't think of it. Lord knows I've done more of these videos in the last 2 years when COVID hit, because again, the exact reasons you were just talking about. But of all the creative people I've been talking to, I can't find one that went, well, no, I just sat on my hands and did nothing for the last 2 years. Steve's all of a sudden putting out album after album of all stuff we did during quarantine, and everybody else just thought, well, or at least opinion wise, they were thriving because they were all of a sudden given time to be creative, as opposed to, well, we're booking it with the rest of our day and everything else.
Right. Well, I will say this though, around October of 2019, I remember sitting in my previous apartment that I lived in Rome and thinking, I'm burnt, because for me, touring, I have to find the gigs, or people approach me with gigs. I got to negotiate the contracts. I've got to write out the contracts. I've got to deal with these insufferable producers who are always trying to, quote unquote, take the piss.
Sure.
And especially because I'm a woman, and in Italy, Italy is still incredibly patriarchal.
Sure.
It's harder to be taken seriously and demand the pay that I deserve at this point in my career.
Well, and your history,
trying to lowball me and all of that other crap.
You're not new.
Not only that, people will offer me these fantastic gigs, and then right when we get to the point to sign the contract, they're like, "Oh, well, we couldn't get the money that we offered you, and so the show wasn't going to happen." And at that point, it's too late to book something else in that period. So I just get screwed.
Yeah,
it's incredibly taxing mentally. And then once I do have the gig, getting on the plane, just getting to the airport and getting on the plane is a pain in the ass. If I got a 9 a.m. flight out of Fiumicino, I've got to take my bag. Luckily, where I live now, before it was much harder, but where I live now, I live, like 100 feet from the train station. So I can get on the train and go straight into the airport, but I'm still dragging my bag, and I got to up and downstairs and get through the airport and get on the plane. It's tighter, and to leave on a 9 a.m. flight, I got to be up at like 5:30 or 6.
Yep.
But people don't think about that part. They just think about, oh, it's so glamorous. You just come on stage and you look beautiful. No.
Yeah. Or they think it's still, people think there's, it's a private plane and there's somebody doing your bag and you've got assistants.
No. And then when you get there and you got to check into the hotel, and then you got to go and you got to rehearse for like 3 hours, and then maybe like shove some dinner down. And then the next day you got to get up, you got to go to the venue, you got to do sound check. And see, guys also forget this part. When you're a woman, you need a whole extra hour just to put your makeup on and get ready. And it's a lot of work.
Well, and well, I was going to ask you, that's the physical business, but then you're also, you're not the drummer or Dave, where he's just got to make sure he's not breaking his arms or hands, but you got to keep your voice in check as well.
Yeah.
How do you do that when you are traveling and is there a routine or a regiment that you keep?
I'm going to show you something. See this?
Yep.
You see that cabinet?
Yes.
You see all that? Yeah. That's all vitamins and nutraceuticals and health stuff. That's what you do to make sure that you keep your voice in good shape. I used to, like, on the first Pink Floyd tour, I had an entire suitcase that was just that stuff, because as I mentioned, our mother was a cardiologist, but she also shifted her entire practice to holistic and preventive healthcare back in the 1970s, way before it was really popular. So we learned, Lorelei and I learned a lot about holistic medicine and things basically to boost your immune system. So that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
I have this cough now because I just figured out, this has been going on off and on for a couple of years. I was really concerned.
Right.
What it was. I just figured out that here in Italy, because mosquitoes are really bad here, because we've got the Tevere, the Tiber River, I'm sure that has a lot to do with it.
Okay.
But I've got like, I don't know if you can see through the window. You see the green out there? Yeah. There's that lovely green spot, which means mosquitoes.
Sure.
So mosquitoes are really bad here. And in fact, we had an invasion of tiger mosquitoes, which carry some really bad diseases. So in my last apartment, I saw up in the wall this thing called vape, which is a mosquito repellent. And I just discovered that exposure to these chemicals can cause chronic bronchitis, and in fact, ulceration to the cornea, which I had to have surgery a couple of months ago in my eye because I had an ulceration to the cornea. So I'm about to saddle up and kick some ass where it comes to that company thing.
There we go.
I'm not going to discuss.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I mean, and then you mentioned Cruise to the Edge, and I think that goes in February of each year, give or take. February, March?
Depending, yeah.
Yeah, so is your plan to
wait,
be...
I wasn't finished.
Oh,
the
sure.
reason I brought up all that stuff about last October and about how much work it is because I was laying in my bed thinking, I'm burnt with all this touring. And what would it take for me to have like a solid 3-4 months where I didn't have to do anything? And lo and behold, so you can blame this the lockdown on me. Because I got exactly what I wanted. I needed several months to just not do anything. And I thank God that I got the chance to do it. And luckily, I was in Los Angeles when it happened, and I kind of got stuck there. But if I hadn't been, I was able to get the pandemic insurance for gig workers like me, and it saved my life. I wish they had it still going.
Oh, very good. So, I mean, going into 2023, do you have plans, again, barring anything pandemic new or unrelated like that, but is the plan to get on Cruise to the Edge or get out for some live dates?
Like I just said, they invited us to the next one. Lorelai and I will have our own slot again. Plus, we'll be singing with Dave Kirshner because he'll be back. And in January, there's a new band. Their name escapes me at the moment. We're looking at doing some shows. It looks like they've got 2 or 3 in January in Seattle.
Okay.
Then I'm talking to a band I worked with before about going to Mexico in February. Then I have to go back to Argentina and Chile in March. So things are already shaping up rather nicely for the
very good. It's a jam session. No, excellent.
Yeah. I didn't perform live for 2 years because of the pandemic. And it got really, last winter was the worst part for me because that's when the pandemic unemployment insurance ended in September of 2021. And I had moved back here in August. I had a whole tour planned in December. And then also I was supposed to go to Russia for a 10-city tour. So between once I got back to in August of 2021, and Omicron hit. So not only were all those gigs canceled because of Omicron, but then Russia went to war. So that whole tour got canceled. So last winter was pretty sketchy.
Well, well, you certainly, people think it's all just exactly the rock and roll lifestyle is, jets and no cancellations and you don't have to worry about anything, but it's obviously it's a real job and it's part of anything else.
Yeah. And I'm not Paul McCartney, I'm not Sting. I'm not some huge rock star. I'm just a regular run-of-the-mill touring musician. I've been to some amazing places and I've stayed in some amazing hotels and I have flown on private planes when you tour with a band like Pink Floyd, but I'm not touring with Pink Floyd anymore. Well, I'm doing this by myself.
Well, and as far as the residuals from that time, right? It's different if again, people don't understand, right? If you're Roger Waters or you're Gilmour and you've got your name on it as opposed to,
I don't have any publishing on any of that.
Yeah.
I wish to God I did. Thankfully, there is an organization called PPL UK, which gives performance royalties. So
Sure.
when some of my things are played on the radio or played on television, I do get a royalty from that. But from album sales and all that, no. Not to mention the fact that also people don't realize how much the business has shifted because of the advent of streaming.
Sure.
They're pirates. They're pirates. And in fact, it's the labels. The labels are taking the lion's share of the money from streaming. I mean, something, what's his name that did that song, Happy? Because I'm happy.
Yep.
Pharrell.
Yeah.
That was in Despicable Me. I think he got a check from Spotify for something like $4,400. And that had, over 100 million unique plays or something
Bananas.
like that.
Yeah.
It's criminal.
Yeah.
And
it's obscene.
I
Yeah.
know some people like Taylor Swift and some other artists are fighting back against it. But at the moment,
Well,
the
and
artists,
let's face
once
it,
again, are being screwed.
and you just said it. I mean, to be an artist, to fight against a label or the label system, you have to be of that level where, well, I can buy my own catalog, or I've got enough
Yeah.
following that I don't need the label, right?
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
I don't want to take up too much of your afternoon. Is there anything we want to chat about that you want to get out there that we didn't have a talk about or anything like that?
October 8th, I have a charity show in Schio in the north of Italy with a band called With Matrix that I've worked with a lot. It's Pink Floyd Day, I think number 5 or 6.
Okay.
Just look for me. Look for me wherever you can find.
If you do find yourself in Seattle, that's relatively close to where we're at. We'll see if I can get down there, and we'll catch up in person.
Yeah, I will be. I'll be in Seattle in like January 20th.
There we go. Awesome. Thank you
Okay.
for your time this afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Have a great afternoon and a great day.
Okay.
Take
Bye.